Oh man, this story I have been following extremely closely, and I'm actually kind of glad that this story has come to an end. This story right here is the WGA and the AMPTP coming together, finally making a deal to break their strike. If you guys weren't aware, they've been on strike for a long time. It's up to 146 days now, actually. And this has caused, new stuff to not be written, right? Things that are in development had to halt until the actors struck as well. There was just a lot of doubt about the future of television and movies, and then once the actors struck, even more doubt was cast about the future of television and movies in the short term. But now things are looking a little bit clearer. Now things are looking a little bit brighter because now we see a path forward, right? The things that the actors were asking for were very similar to what the writers were asking for, and the Hollywood studios finally reached an agreement with the writers. Oh, this is a nice little picture. Nice little picture of all the people sitting around in a circle. Okay. That guy on the left looks sad, though. I don't know. Maybe he's one of the studio executives. So one thing that's interesting to note is that it says here, the strike itself will be in force through the guild's contract approval and ratification process, but picketing has been suspended as of Sunday night. I would not be shocked, actually, to see the strike, officially called off once the lawyers, sign off on all the paperwork, which, to my knowledge, they have not yet done this. Here's a message that the guild sent over to its members. Quote, "Though we are eager to share the details of what has been achieved with you, we cannot until the last I is dotted." The message to members stated, "To do so will complicate our ability to finish the job. So, as you have been patient with us before, we ask you to be patient again, one last time." Now, that kind of to me is like, I'm like, oh man, like I'm a swiper who has to do no swiping or something, because I'm kind of curious to see what all these concessions are. The last remaining concession, at least from the reporting over the weekend, was over AI. Now, I do think that the writers are a little bit too scared of AI. I think that the writers should be allowed to use AI however they want to, maybe not being dictated by the studios, and studios shouldn't be able to have, ChatGPT ghostwrite stuff for them, nor should they be able to, if they see someone using AI to write a script or something, pay them less because of that. I don't think that any of that's fair, but I do think that some AI should be allowed to be used, because I do think it does have some interesting applications, right? Like I've seen the idea floated around that, something like ChatGPT could be used to help writers write themselves out of corners that they've written themselves into. Stuff like that, which I think would be really fun to see, because there's nothing worse than just seeing, a show kind of just like run itself into a rut and then just get all weird, and sort of implode upon itself. So that could help us get better content, at least in my opinion. The unwavering support of the vast majority of WGA members is muscle that allowed the guild's negotiating committee, led by Chris Kieser and David Goodman, to dig on priority issues. They achieved a new model streaming residual formula that should help fellow striking union SAG-AFTRA in its quest to achieve a revenue-based residual. The WGA's formula amounts to a bonus system based on predetermined high-bar performance benchmarks for individual titles, but is nonetheless more than industry dealmakers predicted the guild would secure when the first round of WGA AMPTP talks began in earnest last spring. Well, the thing is that... Oh, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to bump this. But see, the reason why they got what they wanted was because they refused to actually negotiate. They just stood there and then let the studios come to them. Because, and this is one of the things that the conservatives have actually gotten right about covering this strike, is that the studios need the actors and the writers more than the actors and the writers need the studios. We've got indie studios now. We had the A24 and Angel Studios building up tons of goodwill with the WGA and SAG-AFTRA, to the point where they were able to get exemptions to continue filming and shooting things for stuff like The Chosen and upcoming A24 films, while the rest of Hollywood was left to lie stagnant. And now we see, A24 is now coming out with a movie with Nicolas Cage. So, if this deadlock lasted forever, then these indie studios would be eating Hollywood's lunch. And in 2 years, all the blockbusters would be like Angel Studios and A24 films. Quite literally. So I can see why Hollywood decided to just like throw their hands up, even if they're not playing their song, and go along with whatever the WGA was asking for here. But one thing that's interesting is these streaming services have not really wanted to share raw numbers of the viewership of their titles, and I think that stipulation right there will require them to do this. So it will be interesting to see what the market reaction is when they find out, oops, maybe not as many people are watching, Velma or whatever, or Rings of Power, right, as we thought they were. So the market reaction to that news is going to be fascinating, I think. So I'm kind of almost sitting on pins and needles, just the needles at this point, but I'm almost sitting on both to see what the reaction is going to be to all of that. Anyways, the sides are also believed to have come to a compromise on the minimum staffing issue by setting up a formula for a minimum number of writer hires that adjusts on a sliding scale depending on the number of episodes produced per season. That's also an interesting point. I do hope that we end up getting more shows with longer seasons now, because the type of television that gets you 10 to 12 episodes a season is very different than the type of television that you get with 20 to 24 episodes per season. And while I do prefer the series and the seasons that have shorter episodes, because I do think that it means that the quality of each episode is increased, I do think that there is certainly a place for television that is, maybe done on a smaller budget per episode, but is quite longer. I do think that there is a place for that. Ever since the end of USA Network's Blue Skies era, we haven't seen an explosion of shows that have long seasons like that. And I think that that's kind of a shame, to be honest. I think this is interesting. I think the other thing that's interesting too is there's a bit of news that ironically, a day or two before this happened, Amazon Prime announced that they will introduce ads into their Amazon Prime streaming service. Now, I do think that this is interesting, but it shouldn't be surprising because, when you think about it, these people, right, they're asking for residuals. They're asking for residuals, which basically means every time I watch an episode of a show or something where somebody shows up on screen, that actress or that actor gets 1 cent every time I view it, right? Is basically what that means. Where is that money supposed to come from if it's not coming from ads? On broadcast television and cable television, all residual money used to come from ads, right? The advertisers pay for an ad block. Their ad gets played. The person who is airing the content takes that money and then gives a tiny, tiny slice of it to the actors to whom deserve the residuals. But on streaming, you don't have that, right? You only have one flat source of income, which is subscribers. So if these studios decided, you know what, we're gonna pay residuals, but we're not gonna have any ads. You know what that would mean? That could mean let's say I have a streaming service that has 100 subscribers and they're all paying $10 a month, right? And I'm supposed to pay residuals. But then I release one show that is insanely popular and people keep on rewatching it over and over and over again because it's so good. The amount of money I have to pay keeps on increasing, but the amount of money I'm getting stays the same. That's not a sustainable model. It's not a sustainable model to have a streaming service that doesn't have ads and pay residuals at the same time. So I do think, I have an infamous conspiracy theory that all of these streaming services are trying to price us all out of watching ad-free television so that we're all watching stuff with ads, so that then they have the money to pay the residuals and they're not bankrupted by these new WGA deals. I think that this is going to be the case. The day that Netflix with no ads is pushed up to $30 a month, I think is only a year or two away. They're gonna price this all up to a price that's so high that people are going to be this is absolutely ridiculous. I am not paying for this. And barely anybody's going to pay for it. But they're going to have, the ad-supported tiers at reasonable prices, $8 a month, $10 a month, $12 a month. And then everyone's just going to subscribe to that. And we'll just get used to it. So I don't think it's an entirely bad thing, but I'm really interested to see what television is going to look like now. It'll probably take at least a year for us to really see how this affects the TV market, but I think that this will lead to some interesting changes, and hopefully it will lead to some quality changes too, because Hollywood stuff, there's still some good stuff out there. Don't get me wrong. There's still some good stuff out there. Like, we just got finished with Succession a few months ago, right? Like, HBO just finished airing that. But in general, I think the quality of content that's been coming out of Hollywood has been on the decline. So hopefully this will help with all that stuff.